What is my next challenge in daring to be human?
How do I connect with life?
How can I let go of my need for fixed answers in favor of aliveness?
How do I live free from the experiences that shaped me?
How can we be the change the world needs right now?
Join us weekly for stony conversations about life.
It is our mission to allow life itself to reveal to us the answers. Welcome to Chasing Thoughts.
Hi, Keith.
How you doing? Do I do the little hey?
Yeah, you should.
Yeah, hey, it's Chasing Thought. I've never done it before.
What's up? I know it's
Oh,
funny, huh?
good.
You're like,
Yeah.
what's the computer screen?
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, so we're doing this new thing because we always had like one Zoom link, but now on the ones I edit, I'm sending it. So this is like the first time we're doing this. So yeah. Yeah, I never thought about the little hey everybody.
Yeah, so funny. So how was your week?
It was good. It was good. Yeah. Just like worked all week. I'm in this flow, which just feels so good. I had a little bit of that issue with like time and my perspective with it. And that like caught me off for like a day and a half, but then I got right back into it, and so that conversation that we had on that was so helpful.
Yeah, yeah. For me too, this last week has been so great. I sat down and really thought about my time and how I want to spend my time and what's important to me and what my top 3 goals are, like really got that alignment. And then this week, every morning I don't go on like my email or social media or anything for the first couple hours. I've been going on walks with my sister, doing yoga, doing my meditation. I wrote a meditation, right? Like really focusing on what's the most important to me and then diving into work later in the day, and it has worked so well, and I'm so proud of myself, and I feel good because I've been exercising and right all the things that I need to do and all the things that my mind for so long has told me that I just don't have time for.
Yeah. 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 And I'm finding like my own rhythms in that too,
Yeah.
where it's easier for me to stay consistent with exercising if I do it at night. Um,
Yeah.
and so I now have this like routine that I just like love. So I'll work out, take a nice warm shower, and then I'm in the garage for like, an hour and a half, just slow smoking and watching, whatever I want to watch, whatever. And then I sleep like the dead, man.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
Yeah. Going with your natural rhythms is so powerful.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And like for at least for me, like I wouldn't think that. I mean, I've heard of circadian rhythms and stuff, but I wouldn't think that, it gets down to that small scale, you know,
Mhm.
but it's
Yeah.
so cool.
Yeah, for me, I realized that what I was telling myself was I wake up and I feel the best when I wake up, and then it slowly goes downhill. Like I'm the smartest, I feel the greatest. And then by 5 o'clock, I can't talk about anything smart. I'm done. Right? That's just how I work. So I was thinking, well, working right when I get up makes sense. That's when I'm the smartest. But then when I looked at my goal, and my number one goal was like health, wellness, presence,
Mm,
right? Fitness, beingness. I was like, wait a second, then that has to get the best part of my day. Like, if that's my number one goal, I need to put my most energy there.
that's good, dude.
Yeah. And it helped me just kind of find a little bit more alignment. You know how you just go like click, and then you're like, oh, this is
Yeah.
easier. Whether it's I changed my thought or, something happens where it clicks into place and it's like, oh, thank God. The
Yeah.
next time, okay.
Yeah. That's that like transporter effect, like that I always
Yeah,
try to explain because there's this massive obstacle there that you just can't break through. And then that one tweak that puts you in alignment, and all of a sudden you're like, what the hell? How did I get over onto this side of it? It's so cool though.
and I think what's funny is when you hear life coaches or therapists talk, why aren't more people talking about this? Right? You always hear people say, oh, well, you can do XYZ. Here's the 10 steps, this. But very few people, if any, I've seen on, TikTok or social media are saying, here's how you get in touch with you to figure these things out. Here's what it's like to approach a wall and be transported to the other side of it. Because that's really what you want to do as a life coach is teach that skill.
Yes. And that's been one of my biggest complaints, having worked in the mental health industry. I mean, not for long, but just seeing how it happens. Like I was just reminded today, like one of the things that I know a lot of people that were in the programs that I worked at and stuff had a hard time with was being bored. They couldn't be alone. They didn't know how to just be alone. And recently I saw a snap from somebody that I know has some issues, and it was like 2 in the morning, and it just said, someone please FaceTime me.
Hmm.
So bored, can't sleep, don't
Yeah,
like the thoughts, don't like how you feel, but put all the focus goes on exactly how you don't want to feel, and then it's distraction, and it becomes this constant search for this dopamine release,
yeah,
and I don't know, like you said, I don't know why it's not talked about, like that understanding
yeah,
to know, like, oh, that's what's going on.
right. And even to understand, okay, these horrible thoughts that I keep pushing away, I need to meet them, look at it, find out what it really is, and then it won't be there anymore, right? Like, that's how you get rid of those thoughts. And that part isn't really explained either, how you do that in real time, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was talking to a buddy of mine this week, and we were talking about, like the times that you would look yourself in the mirror and you see a monster, like all those thoughts, the shame that we put on ourselves, the judgment, we just see this monster staring back at us, and of course everybody's mind goes to like something like, Freddy Krueger or something staring back at you. But there's all kinds of movies like Monsters Inc., like the monsters that we do have inside, which everybody doesn't
Yep.
necessarily have to be this evil thing, I mean, because everything that we do, everything that is inside of us, it's all to protect ourselves, to keep ourselves safe,
Mhm.
even when we do the bullshit that we're all capable of doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I have never looked something in the face, my shame, my regret, whatever it is, and walked away going, oh, you're still fucking ugly. Right, you're still despicable. That's never happened. What happens is what you're describing. "Oh, I get you. I see you. You're not this horrible monster."
Yeah. Yeah.
And one by one, I think that's how we gain inner peace, right? We change one thought, two thoughts, three thoughts, and slowly we gain that inner peace that we all really desire.
Yeah. You know what? There was a time, um, because I think what it comes down to is a misunderstanding of our own communication with ourselves.
Mhm.
Right. So me and Sandy, like one night a week, for dinner, it's our I call it our bass night. But it's big ass salad. Like that's what we had, just big ass salads, right? And I'm not like huge on salads, even though like I notice like smoking, I'm more prone to eat better after
Mhm.
I've smoked, because like a salad is like from God's garden into my mouth.
Right.
It's the most delicious thing in the world.
Yeah.
But anyway, so um I don't use the best salad dressing like in the world, but it's like kind of like one of my compromises,
Yeah.
but then I'll go to like better stuff for a while, and then I'll need a little break, so I'm like dressing my salad and stuff, and I'm judging myself in my mind. I'm like, all right, ease up, but I'm like, "Ah, just a little bit more, just a little bit more, and then Sandy said something like, are you all set or something like that? And what she was meaning was like, we were gonna like
Sit
clear out
down.
your notes, go sit down. But since I was judging myself, I was like, call me fat. You call me fat. Like, what's your problem? You know what I mean? And I like yelled at her. I like snapped at her. And she was just like, what the hell? You know,
Yeah.
so it was a fundamental misunderstanding that made me do that because it was not what she was saying. And, you know, those monsters that I have inside, a lot of times, it's just a misunderstanding, you know, like if I feel like I need to lie about something, you know, so I don't hurt somebody or whatever, the lie is going to make it worse,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but what it's trying to do is protect me. So in reality, the best thing I can do to protect myself is to be honest.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So the protection is good. And that's why to me, it's like more of like a Monsters Inc.
Yeah.
monster, you
Totally.
know, and not this demon that I have.
Yeah. I also think you described what I would say is one of the most beautiful parts of being in a long-term relationship, long-term marriage, is you start to learn those kinds of things about your partner where you can go, "Oh, you think do you think I'm saying you're fat again? Like, I'm not, baby. I love you." Like, where it's already in your wounds or the thoughts you struggle with are known by that other person. And that's a beautiful thing. They're helping you navigate the world and this whole internal thing you've got going on, right? I mean, I really appreciate that when my husband says, like, when I get defensive or weird and he goes, "Hey, babe, is this like your abandonment stuff coming up? Because I just want to tell you, I'm not going anywhere." And then it just disappears because he saw me, right? And was able to address what was really happening to me, not what I was presenting out here, right? Which was
Yeah,
right, the game of what's happening in this body when I feel insecure.
right.
Yeah,
Right.
and yeah.
I think you're absolutely right. It is like one of the best things. And I think that's one of the areas like especially with guys, it gets sticky because that I think is represented in men with weakness.
Yes.
You know, and I for some reason I've been hearing this like term like, you know, beta male. Like she turned him into a beta male a lot,
Yeah.
like just on socials and stuff. And I get that, you know, and I get that that can happen and people can be like that. And sometimes people that's just the way they are, you
Mhm.
know, but there's a strength in being able to say, this is what I feel,
Yes.
but not being controlled by that feeling. And that's where the difference comes in. You know, when
Mhm.
you hide it, you're 100% controlled by that feeling. You're controlled by that feeling and then the domino effect of judgment that you're going to put on yourself for that. But I mean, even today, like I'm in one of my little depressive cycles. I've been really quiet. I've been a little bit slower, just like
Mhm.
moving a little bit down, but I've been okay. Like I haven't been depressed, you know?
Yeah.
And I realized that today. And I told Sandy, like, yeah, 'cause she's been asking me last couple of days, like, everything okay? And I'm like, yeah, everything's fine. Like, you know, and then it hit me today, like I'm just in one of those down cycles, you
Mhm.
know, and then I'm gonna get on with my day.
Yeah.
I'm not
And
going to
in
go
some
crawl into
ways,
bed.
I like those cycles. Like, when I'm quiet and kind of sad and deep, like, those are, like, the days where I'm, like, burning out. I don't know how to describe it, right? Like, I like those and I come up with deep content ideas, and that's when big shifts happen inside of me or understanding. That's usually when I'm doing that transportation over a wall is in that space.
Yep.
And that's the real life experience of what we're always saying when we're saying you don't want to be happy all the time. The goal isn't to be happy all the time. That's an illusion, right? It's something we've been sold and it's not really the best human experience or even possible, but
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what it's come to feel like for me, you know, that the depression used to feel like a heavy weight that was on me that it just burned like I hated every and I felt it everywhere. Like I literally felt like I was that thick. Like I just had this thin layer of skin and then hollow. And so that's why I would nap like all the time, you know, because I just want to shut my feelings off and not just go dark, you
yeah.
know. But now you ever like on a cold day, cold night, you get in bed and the sheets are really cold but it just feels so good, especially like as they slowly warms up. Like that's that feeling for me now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a comfortable feeling even though I'm down. And the
Yes.
only thing that's changed is the meaning that I give to it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And how much self beat up, right? You do
Yeah.
or don't do.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's another thing that I think I'd like to talk about more and that I don't hear enough on the internet and stuff is really how your self-talk is within your control and you can change it. And that's probably the number one thing you can do to get changes in your life. Like if you're talking kindly to yourself, everything else you do is likely to be a success. But if you don't deal with that thing and you're beating yourself up while you try to go get a new job, get a new partner, it's not going to work.
Right.
Right? Like, yeah, it has to be the first step in any personal growth plan, right? Or any success plan is that self stuff, that inside stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're right. It's something that is not talked about at all,
Yeah.
because it's been just made wrong. Like if that happens, something is wrong, that you have a disorder in your brain. You know, the other day, this was like a month ago, but there was something going on with my daughter, and I started thinking about it, started worrying about it, and then started feeling anxiety. And then those thoughts started creating more thoughts, and then thoughts of like how when I was really, really angry, some of the stuff that I've done, and how I treated them. And I just started feeling like physically sick. And nothing that I could do can get my mind off it. And
Mm,
I finally just decided, like, oh, well, okay, my mind wants to think about my daughter. So let's think about my daughter. And I thought about when Sandy told her to wake me up, and if I don't wake up to like, punch me in the head, and she was like 2 at the time, and she was the smallest, lightest thing. And I remember waking up thinking like something's on me, but not like fully opening my eyes. And when I opened my eyes, she was just reared back like this, like just kneeling on my chest, and then just punched me right in the nose. And I started thinking about that, and started like one time Sandy got a candle for Christmas or something, and my mom asked, like, well, what's the scent? And Ruthie looks at the bottom of it, and she was, had been able to read just a little bit, and she goes, it's the gift of fragrance, because it said it's the gift of fragrance on the bottom. So I mean, we were just talking about that the other day at her and Sandy's like combined birthday party. We're like the gift of fragrance. So I pushed my thoughts into those memories.
yeah.
And within minutes, the anxiety was gone. I was smiling. I was happy.
Yes.
So it's that momentary conscious effort
Yes.
to direct your thoughts and sit with that uncomfortability of fighting with it for a few moments,
Yes.
and then see what happens.
Yes. That, I mean, so well described. And I just want to note for me, in that moment of choice, there is, I don't know, like an inner teenager or like something inside of me that's like, I don't want to fucking do that. I want to stay over here. I want to keep thinking about the bad thing. Like the resistance is very clear in those moments. And it is hard to choose a happy thought and put your focus someplace else. But man, is it worth it to know how to do that?
Oh
And maybe
yeah.
do it well, it's a very valuable skill.
Dude, one of the best things that have helped me, I learned from the great like just psychology lesson of Harry Potter. So you remember when who was it? Lupin, yeah, it was like they had the Bogart in the cupboard and would come out, and that spell ridiculous or whatever.
Yeah.
So like I started playing a game with myself, like if my mind is going to imagine the worst case scenario, so I like when I started having like the panic attacks after COVID, um I was like, I'm dying, I'm having a heart attack, this is it, like I'm making goodbye videos and all kinds of stuff, but like play with that, like okay, I could be having a heart attack.
Yeah.
There could be a parasite that's living inside of me. Oh, dude, the movie Aliens, like I can have an alien inside of me, like, because that is I have just as much knowledge that I have an alien living inside of me as I do as if I'm having a heart attack.
Right. Yep.
So
We're
you,
completely made up.
yes,
Both are fantasies.
completely. They're both created by imagination. It's just I put more belief in this one
Yeah.
than I do this one. So but why not just have fun with it?
Right. Yeah. And if you have that choice, why keep telling yourself that people hate you or people think you're ugly or you're too much or like all these common things that we just repeat to ourselves? If you're lying to yourself anyways, lie to yourself in a way that makes you feel good,
Yeah, dude.
right? Because otherwise, what are you doing? You're just beating yourself up. It's just self-sabotage. So
Yeah.
can I ask a question, a personal question about your girls?
Yeah.
I just realized you actually might be able to help me. So if you listen to this show, and Keith, I have been rebuilding my relationship with my dad, who I haven't really ever had a relationship with these last couple years. And it's difficult. And so I was wondering if you could just speak a little bit to like what your experience was, because you had a bit of rebuilding to do with your girls, right?
Yes.
What did that look like? And what was that experience like? Mainly, I want to know, like, for you as the man and the dad, right? Because I understand it from the daughter's point of view, but I'd love to hear it from you and feel like, what was that like for you? And I think it might help me in my own situation.
So just for like some context on like it was bad. It wasn't as bad as a lot of situations, but it was bad, and when I went into Bosnia, I wrote letters to my oldest daughter, Makari, because Ruth wasn't born yet. And just so that she could know me.
Mhm.
Um and and just I just it was just like a diary, but just letters while I was there. Every day I wrote to her, just in case something happened. And when she turned, I think 18, Sandy gave that to her.
Mm,
And she began to read through it, and she couldn't. She had to stop because she said, I don't know who this is. This is not my dad. This is bullshit. And I did not know this until about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago. So after like all the changes happened.
uh,
And she reread them when she turned 27. Um, and she read the whole thing, and she told Sandy, now I've met my dad. And
was it scary for you to show you, show yourself to her? Like, because obviously what she was saying is, my dad finally let me see his heart, his real gooey stuff, right? I know him. I know what he's afraid of. I know what he loves. I know, right? Like the intimacy of relationship. Was that scary for you to do?
yeah, I mean, because it's all vulnerability,
Yeah.
and I did not know how to do that. Like it didn't exist. Um, Everything was this forced like wall of control.
Mm,
Um, and I think of these skyscrapers that they've had to build with flexibility, in case of earthquakes and stuff. But like, I mean, just looking at scaffolding in like China and Japan, like the bamboo,
yeah.
it's enough to hold up this massive towering scaffolding, but it sways, but it won't break,
Yeah.
and that's what vulnerability is. We see vulnerability as being broken and shattered, and there's a part of it that's in there, but it's swaying with the life, the ebbs and flows of life, and not just staying static until something begins to break,
Yes.
you know and so that was the biggest thing. I realized that, yeah, I can't be vulnerable. And when I talked to them, and apologized for things, even like years after the changes have happened, a memory would come up, and I would talk to them about it, and I would
Mm,
apologize to them for it. And most of the times they're like, I didn't even remember that. Um,
right.
because
But you're rebuilding trust with them in that way, right? Because
correct.
you're, yeah.
I'm showing them that my feelings of awkwardness and uncomfortability are not more important than
Mm,
ensuring that there are no divisions between us.
that was so beautifully said, Keith. That is so beautiful.
Because I mean, unfortunately, that's what it is. And again, I get it. You know, it's one of those cute little freaking monsters, but that can cause so many problems trying to keep you safe. I don't want to feel this. So instead, I'm not going to say anything. But then like my daughters may have been never apologize for that. I can't, or like, I can't believe like that's what happened. I mean, that could have been the thing that just
Yes.
kept an obstacle between us,
Yes. Yeah.
you know? So it's putting the other person above me 100%.
Yes. Yeah.
And I did videos on that and stuff, and I got a lot of pushback
Mm,
because I think it's one of those things where it's a paradox. It's not talked about because putting them above me makes me feel amazing. But in order for me to do that, I have to be first. I have to take care of myself, like you were talking about.
yes.
If health is your goal, that needs to be where you're putting when you have the majority of that best energy, that's where you got to be putting it into.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a paradox. It doesn't mean I'm denying myself. That's what we do where we get into trouble.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. So nuanced. And you're right. That nuancedness of it isn't really talked about and discussed online.
Yeah.
Like you don't see that. It's not common. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think thinking about it, I think the first thing that I realized both with Sandy and the girls was that I couldn't tell them um how I'm gonna be.
Mm.
Because I had told them so much so often
Right. So
that
your words really didn't mean anything at that point because your actions never backed them up.
correct. So I had to first change my actions.
Mm. Yes.
Instead of telling them that I love them, I want to show them that I love them.
Yes.
You know, and then it was understanding that there is incredible strength in incredible power in saying I'm wrong, I was wrong.
Mm. Yeah.
You know, even when something arises, you know, I remember my daughter was trying out a new job and it just wasn't for her. She was not happy at all. And me and her got into an argument because I was like, what are you thinking? You know, this it's a better job. But
Mm.
she went back to her old job and she's so incredibly happy. And this guy, like, I mean, it's more like he's like an adopted grandfather, you know? And so I was wrong. And so I made sure I told her like I was wrong about that, you know?
Yeah.
Because I want them to see too, like there's not shame in failure.
Right.
Just
Yeah. And I think when somebody doesn't admit that they're wrong, that becomes, like you said, a wall in the relationship, right? You can't, it prevents, it's a screen. You just can't have that, right? You have to agree on what actually happened, which is I was wrong sometimes, you know?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the third biggest thing was accepting them for who they are, not for
Yeah.
who I want them to be.
Ugh. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's like one of the hardest.
Yeah. It's very true because as a parent, you've spent, 20 plus years knowing this person and imagining this person and right growing this person and then when they turn out very differently than you think that's a lot of time that you spent with an imaginary version of them,
Yeah.
right? It's understandable that that's hard to do as a parent, and yeah, it is so freaking important.
Yeah. And again, it comes from a good place. I want to help mold them into the person that I think will give them the best life, but
Right.
it takes all autonomy away from them.
Yes.
You know, I mean, like my oldest daughter, when she was working full time, going to school full time, wrote a book and planned her wedding. Um, she just took on a new job, and then she took on a part-time job with her old firm. And I'm like, dude, are you gonna burn out? I mean, like, what about like the other stuff you want to do, writing? And she goes, I find that when I'm not busy, I don't get anything done. But when the more busy I am, the more I get done. And I'm like, what the hell's wrong with you? Because like, I'm like, that makes no freaking sense. But she does it. You know, my other daughter, she has this job in this little historic soda making place, you know, with this awesome guy that takes care of her. She has her dog, then her and her husband adopted a dog that was kept down, just like lived in a barn, was never outside. And then they rescued two birds from Petco that were like so abused, the birds would just sit there and shake. And that's like the one I put on my, so like hanging out with Scooby. He's like my best friend now, you know, and she just hangs out with her animals and reads.
Yeah.
But they're happy.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that is really cool. Yeah, with my son, instead, I've been really trying to train myself, instead of saying right or wrong, like you should do this, you shouldn't do this, a good idea, it's not a bad idea, like giving my opinion, like listening, and then saying something like, I know no matter what happens, you're going to be able to handle the results of this choice, right? Or something that just affirms his own ability to deal with it
Yeah.
versus like my opinion on what, is going out here in the world. And I don't always get it right, but I started thinking like, that's how I wish I was affirmed when I was a kid. Not, no, don't go to that school. No, that choice is bad. Don't date that guy. But just like, hey, you know what? You're going to be able to listen to yourself because you always have. And I
Yeah.
know you're going to get to make the right choice for you. Right? That is like, oh, you support me in me. So it's a beautiful way to support people.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, so many of the times it's just, we need that validation. Like, am I doing the right thing? You know, and
Yeah.
really what it comes down to is who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it could be the absolute right thing that is going to put your life on a trajectory for fame and wealth and everything. And then we can get hit by an asteroid, or a door can fall off a plane and take you out. Like,
Yep.
you never know what's going to happen,
Yeah.
you know? And like, and I know like I love, again, just the way like chasing thoughts and like how this whole conversation just took place, even though we were like, okay, we're going to talk about this, you know, but
Yeah.
it comes down to intention versus expectation,
Yes.
you know, because expectation is trying to control the outcome of a matter. It's attached to ego, you know, all that as attachment to it, you know, where
Yes.
the intention is just like, yeah, I want this to happen. I wish this would have whatever, but without
Right.
having that attachment to it.
Yeah. I actually have a funny story to share about that because I had a really difficult week with my family dynamics. And so there was some conflict because I have been saying, I want a deeper relationship. I want a deeper relationship. Right. We need to do things more, a bit aggressively. I will admit that. And my intention was I want to build a close family. I want us all to really know each other, right? Like my intention was so beautiful. But because I had expectations on a certain way it should look, this is how they should behave, they should call me this many times, we need to do whatever it is, right? I was actually getting further away from my intention because I was trying to live out my expectation of what that was going to look like. And so it was funny because after this conflict, I spent some time sitting so I could see what was going on in here. And I was like, this is so funny. I need to go back to my intention, which is like love, acceptance, whatever that looks like. Right. And just letting go of how I think it should look. And, you say that, and I just want to say, like, that sounds easy, and it is not easy
Oh,
because
hell no.
especially not when it's a relationship where, like mine, where it's my dad, and I'm like, no, I have these dreams of us communicating in this way or doing these things and having this relationship, right? But it doesn't matter how beautiful my dream is if I'm not getting there with the way I think it should be, I need to let that go, right? And accept what is, keeping that intention of my heart and trusting that the universe is going to do what it does and it's going to be the best thing.
Yeah, that is such a difficult thing to do, and it is one of the most rewarding things. You know,
That's
that those sayings
surrender-
like, say that one more time.
that's that like surrender and here, that big surrender to expectations or what's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, like have you ever heard the sayings like we are like either like the director of our own lives or the writers of our own stories? Like I get what it means, but it's not really true. You know, a director controls the scene, controls how the observer is going to watch the movie.
Yeah.
And the writer controls the narrative and the scene and controls how the observer is going to experience the story. And what we try to do is we try to direct our lives. We try to control how we're going to experience it. But what our job is to do is to just experience it.
Yes. That was such a good analogy. I've never heard that analogy. But yeah, we're not the writers of our lives because there's elements that we can't control. So, right, it's more dynamic than that.
Yeah. I mean, like the waves come in and go out with the tides. That's, controlled by like the gravity, like the moon and all that sort of stuff. I mean, there's so much stuff that's going on that's gently pushing us this way and that, but we fight against it to be, because like, no, in the house that I'm building, I put this brick here and this is where it's supposed to be.
Yes.
But if we're fighting against that current, and fighting against where that flow is naturally taking us. So I think here's the thing of like, going back to that discussion we had, like flow versus structure,
Ah,
like being in the flow of experiencing life, but within there having the structure.
yes.
I mean, we have the flexibility of our body, and inside of us is the structure of our DNA.
Yeah. Yeah. And checking in to know where you should be on that arc, right? Like that's what I did. We had a conflict. Checked in and I was like, oh, I need to be more flexible here. Right. So I know to go this way. And then at some point, there might be another situation in my life where I go, oh, I need to be more rigid here. Okay. Right. And you're checking in and managing that. Yeah. It's rewarding. And also, you were saying like people say like, oh, vulnerabilities for pussies or weaklings or whatever. And it's like, have you ever done it? Because it's the most fucking terrifying, hard, horrible thing ever. Like you're talking about those conversations with your daughter when you're going to someone who like you love and you're about to share something and everything inside your body's like, fucking run away, go hide, don't share this. And doing it anyways. Holy shit. That is strength. That is courage. And every time somebody says it isn't, I'm like, yeah, you haven't done it. Because it's not easy.
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, some of the toughest guys I know cannot be vulnerable, and it's funny too, is because some of the most unassuming guys that I know, like I remember this one friend I had, Harry, who he was a medic and he ended up going into special forces, and he was, I mean, the most quiet, humble, nice guy in the world. But when he came back from, I believe it's called selection, the first course you go through, like a tryout type thing, um, they were doing a buddy carry with like this 500-pound thing, and the guy he was doing with it couldn't hold it, and it fell and it shattered his hand, and he had 2 weeks left, and they said, if you go to the medic, we're going to have to recycle you, which means you're going to wait to heal up here, and then you have to go through the whole course again. And so he was like, screw that. And he just lived with this massively swollen, shattered hand for 2 weeks.
Oh, crap.
Finished, yeah, and finished the course. And so one of the most badass dudes that I know, but he was so humble, so kind, and he had no problem being open, authentic, and vulnerable. It's like he didn't know how not to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah.
And so for
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
how you go ahead.
I was just like thinking like this, the whole idea of the stuff that's not talked about, especially when there's this massive mental health industry that is so incredibly profitable, especially
Yeah.
with the medications,
Yeah.
you know, and with a simple understanding of how our minds work.
Hmm. Yeah. I think what we're talking about is that space, like the same space that science and spirituality is interested in right now, right? Where you're like, okay, this thing is happening. It's experiential. It doesn't have the laws of physics behind it, right? But it's guiding my life. And how do I use words to describe this thing or this process when it's only experiential and it's a little bit different to ever, like it's a hard space to explain. And I think that's why a lot of people aren't talking about it, because it's easier just to say, do these 10 things and you're going to feel better.
Yes. And I think that's what we're looking for.
Yes.
There's a big difference between mental health and physical health.
Yeah.
Like if I have high cholesterol, okay, do these 10 things and it'll get better. Like I need to eat better, less crap, you know, uh, whatever, like Hulk Hogan's like 3 commandments, like do my training, say my prayers, and have my vitamins, and I'm good, but when it comes to mental health, it's not like a thing of like, okay, I'm depressed. Oh, okay, this is what we need. We need to set like, this side of your brain because there's a fracture here or something. It's not that simple.
Yeah.
And there's not a doctor out there that can do anything for you.
Yeah.
You can get all the advice in the world, but you have to do it.
Yep. Yep.
But we think that the answer is out there. And I want to be careful because I know there's really good
Yes.
therapists
Great
out there.
advice.
There's people that
Yes.
need that, but we think that they have the answer. And a lot of times I think a lot of them think they have the answer.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. But I guess, as a life coach, I think this is what you and I both try to do with people, right? Is introduce them to themselves.
Yes, yes,
Right.
yeah,
And it's such a difficult process that I haven't even come up with good marketing for it in years
yeah,
and
dude.
years, right? Because how do you say what you do when it's this sort of vague in a way, right? Like, well, I'll help you get to know yourself, but that's so like trodden. Like people don't really get what that means,
Right,
right?
right.
Yeah, and I'm always frustrated by that.
Yeah, I remember when I first started this, there was like this marketer I saw online, and I really liked the dude. I liked everything he said. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna buy an hour of his time for $300. And he's like, all right, so what's your like, what do you tell? And I'm like, well, I tell people like what I have to offer is meaningless. And he's like, what, you can't freaking say that, dude. I'm like, it's true. I offer them nothing. I give advice. If they take it or they don't. And I'm not saying like if they take my advice, everything is good, but I'm also of the belief of if like what I'm saying and what I'm doing, it's not working, it's not their fault. It's we need to pivot, so we can find that way that works for them. Like you said, introducing them to themselves.
Yes. And it is a series, like when people come to work with me, I'm like, we're going to do experiments in your life. We're going to say, if you do this thing for 30 days, how do you feel? If you do this thing, right? If you act this way, if you change this habit, and we're going to do that until we find your things. And the amount of time that that takes is dependent on your level of self-honesty,
Yes.
right? So, like, if you wanna move faster and you want this relationship to be done in 3 months, be fucking just honest with yourself, and you will go through all these experiments very quickly.
Yep.
'Cause you're gonna
Yep.
know.
Dude, my favorite line that I've ever read in a book with Edith Egger, Choices, where she wrote, and this was like she was 50 and she was in the concentration camps when she was like 15, 16. And she wrote, she finally realized, she said, I had my secrets and my secrets had me.
Mm.
And again, just talking about like guys, like, man, like I'm a man, like I can't talk about this stuff. I'm gonna hide it and nobody will know,
Yeah,
and it's this thing, okay, okay, you're giving up control to this idea of what people are gonna think of you.
yeah,
That's weakness.
yes.
Even by people that can whoop my ass, that it's still a weakness,
Yeah,
you know. But when we can be honest and truthful with ourselves, like
yeah,
all these people, like I don't walk into like wherever I'm going and be like, hey buddy, I'm depressed. So you all know, like nobody needs to know. But I can be honest. When I'm honest with myself, it releases all the anxiety of trying to live behind this mask of I'm not this. Bullshit. I am this, but I can also have a good time while I'm like this.
right. Yeah. I don't know what you said that reminded me. I wanted to tell you, maybe it's just about not caring what other people think. I got myself a new bike and it's like a beach cruiser with like the handlebars and like the big fat seat. And I put a basket on front and like a coffee holder and my cell phone. And so it's like, a cruise machine. And I have wanted this for so long, but have been like, what if someone sees me riding my bike and thinks I'm dumb? I'm 45. When you're 45, you're too old to cruise around on a bike around like all these ideas. And then I told myself exactly what you said. Like, all right, I guess you're going to be a little bitch to what other people think, right? Like, if that's the way you want to live your life, fucking do it, Mindy. And then I was like, I don't want to be a little bitch, right? Like, right? That's like my inner talk. Or I was like, okay, yeah, what the fuck do I care? And if I don't even like the type of person that would judge me, I don't want to be friends with them, right? Like, I don't respect that. So, like,
Right.
what? I'm bowing down to people who I wouldn't even respect if they behaved that way and judged me for riding a stupid bike, right?
Right.
Like, it's just so silly when you really break it down. So, I'm stoked because, as you know, I love to smoke weed. Usually I do in the afternoon after my work is done. And sometimes my sister will call and be like, oh, hey, you want to come over and do this? And I don't drive when I have been smoking. So I'm like, no, I can't. But now I'll just hop on my little cruiser bike and
Dude,
cruise,
that basket is a perfect place to carry a pipe in your weed.
right?
Yeah,
Like,
you can stop halfway there and just
it just seems like so much fun to me and really embracing that sort of slower, like, I don't have to rush this. I can ride my bike places. I have the time to do that in my life, and it's something I enjoy,
Yep.
right? Because for so many years, I lived like, Go, 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 jump in the car, drive as fast as you can." And
Yeah.
I'm just so like that grateful every day. Like, thank you, thank you, thank you. Like, I have this slow life, and I'm just filled up with gratitude for it.
Yes. Dude, yesterday I had a 45-minute conversation with Zoe, my dog in the
Here,
backyard.
yeah, for everybody, that is Keith's dog.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
45-minute
So
conversation. Go ahead.
yeah, so Zoe, she has like she's got a lot of like genetic issues, like this poor dog, and she has a very sensitive stomach. So we have to feed her, like we have to feed her, she gets breakfast and we have to give her like two very small meals. And if not, like she'll end up throwing up like all this bile and stuff. Um, and then she'll have her dinner. And so when Sandy's in the office, I'll give her her little small meal and then we'll go out. And I'm like, dude, I got a 20-foot lead, like training lead and stuff. I'm like, I'm just gonna hook her on this because we can't let her run because of her hip
Right.
dysplasia. So, and I'm just gonna go outside and smoke. So just, I take my shoes off. I walk around in the grass outside. Zoe just walks around. I just follow her with the lead, smoking. And then I just started talking to her. And I had like a 45-minute conversation. And I was like, my neighbors must think like I am the poster child of why cannabis is so dangerous, you know, like, but
Totally.
I'm having a blast.
Yes.
I
Yes.
was so full of just gratitude and joy and, you
And
know,
I find that in those kinds of moments, I can become super present. Like when I'm petting my
yes,
cat and I'm like, "Oh, you know, do whatever." All of a sudden I'll like wake up and I'll be like, "Oh, where was I?" Like I was so present in my experience with this thing. Has 1 minute gone by or 10 minutes? I don't know. I better figure out what's going on, right? Like I always lose myself. And that's joy, right? Those are the types of things we want to chase in our life, those moments when we
yes,
feel that way.
yeah. And to me, the biggest part of that presence is the thing that I lose is the need to control.
Yes.
And
Yes.
control is going to come from the need for control is going to come from my imagination or the more my past experiences. And they're going to say, this has to happen, the expectation.
Yeah.
But when you, like you said, that surrender into the just that moment, like one of the most magic, there is magic in the world, but it's not a spell. You don't need a wand. Like there is magic in observation,
Mm.
because observation collapses the infinite amount of realities that can be into the singular experience that we're having, and we lose everything.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's the place we want to be in more, right? So the question is how to get there. And I think pursuing things that open you up and make you feel that way, so you experience that more, will make more of it everywhere else in your life, right? Because when I have those moments, for me, they're like with my cat in my garden, where I'm lost to myself, then I can have it more in other areas in my life and it starts to grow. But a lot of times people feel like they don't have time or they don't deserve to chase after these things that they love that fill them up.
Yeah, and we've been told that those things are not the necessities of life.
Yeah. And also, like, if you're a good parent, like, you better be spending that time with your kids. And if you're a really good employee, you need to be working overtime. And if you're like, we've made all these standards that take us away from that.
Yeah. So it's one of the things that being open and vulnerable with my kids, I learned is sometimes they want to be left alone.
Mm,
Like
yeah.
I'll call, like I always had a problem if I called them and they didn't answer, I
Yeah.
would flip the fuck out. I'm like, you have a cell phone. There's no reason why you should, and of course I'm ignoring all of the reasons why they may not be able to answer. But now, like, I'll try to call my daughter and like she won't answer. And go, okay. Because then I would start with the text. Where are you? Is everything okay? What's going on? Trying to force that, control that connection. And then like an hour later, I'll get a text like, I have a migraine right now. Sorry, I just don't want to talk. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, it's fine. And again, like making them more important than my uncomfortability.
Yeah. Yeah, that's perfect. And that's exactly what I was explaining about the way I was treating my dad, right? Realizing like, oh, I'm trying to make you be a certain way. Why don't you call me back right away? Why don't you see me this many times, right? And that's not for me to decide. Right? And I think that's like the deepening of the next level of the relationship, even though it feels like distance if you're the person who wanted more, right? It's actually getting you closer. Like you're closer to your daughters for not chasing them down because that doesn't feel good when you are have a migraine or you're too overwhelmed to talk and someone's chasing you down. Right?
Yeah.
Where are what do you do? Right? That's not building love, right? And it's
Yeah.
hard sometimes because when we love people and care about them, that can be the way that love manifests sometimes. It's kind of that over controlling, right? Or
Yes.
wants to come out.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I never did that out of hatred for
Right.
my
No.
family. It was, out of like, this is the way it should be. This is, if you do this, you'll be happy, you'll be okay, you'll be safe, you'll be whatever the word is.
Right.
But that's in my mind, you
Yeah.
know. And one of the things I realized with Sandy is I have a way to communicate love, but since we're different people, she has a completely different way to communicate love. You know,
Yeah.
so the way I tried to communicate love in the beginning by just gifts, you know,
Yeah.
whatever, didn't matter to her.
Mm-hmm.
So to her, love meant listening. And
Mm-hmm.
like that wasn't my strong suit, you know. So she would
Yeah.
give me this long list. It's like, all right, what do you want for your Christmas or birthday? You know, you give a list or whatever. And then I would get her something that I thought she wanted. And then she get upset. She's like, you're not listening to me. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I am listening to you. You want gifts. And I got you a gift that I think would be amazing and I think would make you love me, you know?
Right.
And she's like, but I didn't ask for that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, what the hell are you talking? You know, and then realizing like, oh, and now like me just hanging a towel up after I'm done with the dishes is the most amazing thing that I can do, like to show her that I love her, you know? And it's like the weirdest thing. So it's learning how the other person communicates and communicating like their way.
Yeah. I think that's also a really fun part of being in a relationship is figuring those things out and finding ways to love your partner that actually expand you because you learn to love in new ways, right? Like it's a double gift. It's not just that you're doing it for them. Like I know the ways like my husband loves sports. So my interest in sports and watching games with him is a way I can love him, right? And the time that we spend together is so fulfilling for me. And how I've learned to know him as a human and a man through his love of sports and how that connects to his childhood. Like, I could have missed all that,
Yeah.
and how sad would that have been?
Yeah.
So really me doing things for him or his way or loving him how he was a gift to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember that was one of the first lessons that really stuck in my head when I started the coaching things was that we feel love in two ways. Like when someone gives it to us, we feel it. And when we give it to someone else,
Mhm.
you know, and the only way to ensure that we'll feel it is when we're giving it out,
Yeah.
you know, and when we that was the key with me and Sandy when I stopped again telling her how I'm going to be different, whatever, and I started acting different. The way for her, putting her ahead of me, she thought, dude, she was flipping out. Like, you're messing with my head. Like, what are you trying to make me think I'm crazy? All this stuff. I mean, she was like nuts. And it took like a couple of days for her to come to this realization, like, okay, things are different.
Mhm.
You know, and just, I mean, yesterday, it's been 6 years from that point. Yesterday, she's like, I still can't get used to the changes, like that. I don't need to be afraid
Yeah.
I make a mistake or I forget something or whatever.
Right. Because you guys were so young. I mean, that got programmed into her body, that response, living with that you. And yeah, so it's going to take time, right? That's how we work as humans. And that's
Yeah.
okay. And maybe it'll go away someday, maybe it won't, but it's not a problem. It's just what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah.
I like the way this whole conversation touched on the subjects that we wanted to talk about, even though
Yes, dude.
like I'm like, well, we never got into the topic, but we totally covered the topic.
Yeah. Because everything we talked about was all just about the like the difference between an expectation and an attention.
Yeah.
You know, how much attachment we have to even those good intentions, which turn it into an expectation.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what I would be really curious about is creating a list of things that people don't talk about, like what we were discussing. Like try to create a list of like, okay, how do you change your mind? Or how do you like what do you really do in the moment? The kind of stuff that we get into here. And I'd say if listeners have an experience like that, right? But I'd just be curious, what are those experiences that people hear sort of like buzzwords for, but it's never really explained,
Yeah, I love that.
you
Yeah,
know?
I think that is so important.
Yeah, because then maybe you and I could start doing like some videos or something on those types of topics to help people, right? Because that
Yeah.
is, I actually thought of one when this thing happened with my dad, and that was how to self-manage after a conflict. So I had a conflict. I go home. First, my brain is like, this is why you're right. This is why you're right. They'll see you're right when they think about this. They'll remember you said this, and then they'll know you're right. That's where everybody goes, right? After a fight. Totally not a useful place. That's never going to get you where you want to go. And for me, that's where I used to stop. And I'd stay in that space for hours or days or whatever. That's not effective. So now here's my self-management process. That's happening. And I'm like, okay, come here. Like, you're angry. Yes. Why are you angry? Well, this isn't fair. And this is okay. Right. I listen to all my emotions. Okay. When that's like settled down enough, that's step one. I try to see every possible story. What's the scenario if I'm the villain? What's the scenario if she's the villain? What's the scenario from her point of view? Like as many as I can come up with. And then step three is always the same. I realize all these stories hold a little bit of the truth. None of them are real, and it doesn't matter what the story is. So then, I'm like, okay, what do I want to do now to get what I want
Mm.
in this reality? Because it's either like in a marriage, either I'm going to leave the relationship or I'm going to put up this boundary with this person, or I need to fucking figure it out so I'm not hurting, so that there's not this conflict here, right? So what do I need to do? Do I need to tell myself a new story? Do I need more information? What's happening for me so I can resolve this? And I wish somebody would have told me about that process way back when. So when I had fights with people, I knew, okay, first I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this, then I'm going to think about what I actually need to do to create the results I want.
Yeah, dude,
And
that's
everybody's process is probably a little different, right? But like that sort of thing. Like,
yes. And that's what I truly believe. I truly believe like what's missing is this foundational aspect of like the foundations of how our mind works, not our brains, but our minds.
yes.
Understanding that we're not our thoughts. Okay. So if we're not, then what the fuck are our thoughts? You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, why are we different? How do you begin to become the observer of your thoughts and to act from that level, you know, processing like when there's conflict, like all of that stuff,
Yes.
how to put somebody else like first, that whole paradox where you're not denying yourself,
Yes.
but it's actually feeding you and not like emptying you. Like there's so much out there that's not talked about
Yeah.
that I think would change so many people's lives.
Yeah. I feel it's like the instruction manual on how to be human.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think especially for my autistic brain, I'm like, yeah, just write, like somebody write this down and give me a manual so I know how to deal with this fucking craziness, consciousness, and a human body with thoughts and emotions and physical needs. And right, like this is madness, self-management.
Right. Right.
And learning how to do that is the number one tool you can have in your life.
Oh, but yeah.
No one's talking about it. So I guess we need to try to write an instruction manual.
Yeah. Yeah. Dude, we gotta like title it something like, like whatever, like the 10 steps, like on transform, like, yeah, do this, do all this shit, and life will be perfect. Nothing bad.
That's right. Totally. That's the tagline. Do all
Yeah.
this shit and life will be perfect.
Yeah.
I love that. That is so funny. Ugh. Well, thank you for today. I really missed last week, and I think it's good that we're doing every other week for a while to try to get more content out and more quality over quantity, but I missed coming on last week.
Yeah. Yeah, like Friday, I've grown to look forward to Friday so much
Yeah.
because I'm always amazed at where the conversation goes.
I was just telling my sister that on our walk this morning. I told her our topic and how we come in, really neither of us knowing the answer, like to a thing. And then we just start talking, and the intention somehow pulls the conversation in that direction, even though we're not fucking controlling it. Like it's exactly what we talked about, right?
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
You're like, I don't know how it works. I don't understand why I feel better and I feel more knowledgeable after we talk about the things we don't know.
Yeah, like so I pulled up this quote from Deepak Chopra on this. So he said, an intention is simply a thought impulse which
Mm,
gives structure and direction to creative energy,
mm,
which I just love that
yeah.
line. So it's like, because an impulse is just like a flash,
Mhm.
and like control for me is like a light that's just constantly shining. You know what I mean? So he says it arises from a neutral state of awareness. Expectation is a hope that something will happen. It comes from an ego state that is identified or attached to the outcome.
Yes.
Using intention allows you to remain detached from the outcome, and therefore the process of manifestation helps your spiritual growth. So all the things that, like I'll say, like even for this business, like I have an intention for this thing to be successful, for it to grow, for me be able to like sustain myself with this, and then 2 days later, I'm like, why don't I have $10 million yet? Tony Robbins is rich, and then I'm like, I suck. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, so I don't have an intention. I have this attachment to the outcome,
Yeah.
and the same thing in our relationships. Letting go, which I mean, talk about vulnerability. So that means that I could have went to my girls and known that they could have said, you know what, fuck you,
Yeah.
and walked away.
Yeah.
And that's scary as hell. And my brain is gonna fight, my mind is gonna fight against that so much to the point where it will convince me not to fix things because the possible imaginative outcome is more painful than facing like the reality of the situation.
Yes. And sometimes that process can be so unconscious that you're only hearing the reasons your brain is giving you, right? Like, oh,
Yes.
well, this is a. So first it's like even realizing, oh, I'm in the reasons, then I'm in this. Like there's several levels of that self-awareness to build and practice.
Yeah, I mean, we have the pain versus pleasure principle, and that happens on an unaware level because it's a survival mechanism.
Yeah. I
Like,
actually used that this week.
oh, really?
Yeah. Like I want to tell you a story. Sorry to interrupt you. We probably
No,
gonna
no,
forget.
no.
Um, I realized when I have a goal like working out or eating right, and I'm thinking about how great I'm going to feel when I'm fit and blah, 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 I feel good. And then the day comes and it's time to work out. And I think about working out and I don't really feel good. I think about eating a salad and I don't feel good. Right. So this last week, I just replaced it. And when I was like, I'm not going to work out, I'm going. And I thought about, you were like, oh my gosh, how great I'm going to feel when I'm healthy and I'm going to be able to do this. And right. And then the pleasure of it came back and it was easier to get on the treadmill.
Yeah,
Just
dude.
shifting my focus to like my result versus like my current pain.
Yes. And that's, dude, it's so funny because that story is the perfect example of what I was gonna say. Like, if we don't have the awareness, we don't have the knowledge of, oh, that's what our mind does, it moves away from pain and towards pleasure, then it would just happen. And then I would go and lie, or I would go and you know, eat crap and not exercise and all that stuff, where I'm actually causing more pain. But
Mhm.
when we become the observer of our thoughts, we can be like, oh, I don't want to get on the treadmill. Instead, I want to get knee deep in a bag of Doritos. It's like, because I see that as more pleasurable right now, and I see the short-term pain that you know, the treadmill is going to cause. But oh my God, dude, when I'm like fit and I'm looking good and I'm feeling good and I'm feeling and now all of a sudden you're ramping up the pleasure side. You
Yep.
can't do that if it happens automatically under the under the radar.
Yes.
You know, that's where it's going to happen, but you have to be able to observe it.
Yes. Yeah. And then I don't want to say strong enough to choose it, but that sounds bad. But there has to be an inner fortitude when you start choosing to be different.
Yeah, that
Or,
discipline.
or the personal growth and development path, right? If you're going after a goal or want some desire something in your life, you have to build that discipline, that commitment, that ability to choose another thought, all of that.
Yeah. You know, I just thought of, and I don't know if this connects in any way, but discipline has the word disciple in it, I think. And a disciple is like a follower,
Yeah.
and just being a follower of ourselves,
Yes. And
honoring
employing
our,
your discipline, your disciples, right? Which is like your actions and your functions to help you bring things into your life.
yeah,
Yeah, I really like thinking about it that way. I think that's really beautiful.
yeah, it's pretty cool, man. Yeah,
I was thinking earlier, like, I don't really believe in God and the devil anymore, but growing up in that mythology, if there is such a thing as the devil, I think that it's that thing that keeps you from yourself, right? Those voices that you can't listen to your intuition, you can't, whatever that is, that's what I would call the devil,
yeah,
because it's the thing in life that keeps people from truly having joy and peace and all the things that we deserve.
that's awesome. I love that. Yeah,
I was just thinking about
absolutely.
that this week, like, huh, if I was to personify it, and that makes it even easier for me not to listen to those thoughts because I'm like, whoa, you're not doing me any favors.
And that, again, it's something that is absolutely not talked about, because it's something that is exploited. How we feel about ourselves, how we turn this world into a living hell, is exploited with the promise of a paradise in another life.
Ah,
You know, so who gives a shit about this one? Who gives a shit how you treat people, what you do?
yeah.
You know, like, one of the things I noticed, and I don't know why I do this now, but I just do. Um, it used to be like, if I found like a bug in the house, whatever, you know, you go get like a tissue or whatever, and you just grab it, squish it, flush it, whatever. Now I like get it to crawl on my finger, and I bring it outside. I don't know why. And I'm not saying like, oh, if you kill a spider, you're wrong. You're like, not saying, I don't know. There's something more precious to life to me now,
Yes,
that, like, the more precious my life is to me, the more precious every life is to me.
I agree. Same here. Yeah. I think that's sort of that interconnectedness, right? Recognizing like, oh, you're a living thing just trying to make it on this planet too, right? And that very live and let live. And yeah, there's more grace and more appreciation.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why so we just, when I see people like with church, or if somebody like tries to, you know, whatever, you know, like the whole thing, like, well, like, it's the people, it's not God. So don't blame God for them. Like, I'm not, like, I feel closer to God on this side
Yep.
of things, because I feel like I line up more with what Jesus actually said in his actions, than I do this fear and anger that just stirs people up.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, when I went to India for a couple weeks and I stayed in this ashram and it was really cool and they had all these different temples and it was beautiful, but they had a Jesus temple with like big pictures of Jesus and it was so neat because everybody there was celebrating him, but from a place like you're talking about, like he represented love and like all the, it wasn't bastardized in the American way that I had previously seen Jesus presented. And it was just all love and beauty. And it was so shocking to me to find that in India, right? Like in this place
Yeah.
where they don't even know who Jesus is, but they actually did. And they had a whole temple devoted to him. And I thought it was so cool.
It's so funny. You know how many times like I've heard preachers like make fun of India or something because it's like, you know, whatever, it's so dirty and you got cows walking around and people starving. They're too stupid to even eat the cow, like whatever and stuff. And then they're in India, they're celebrating Jesus's life.
Love and acceptance.
Yeah, and then here we are Sunday morning in my self-righteousness shitting all over all these like an entire
Right.
continent of people. Good times, man.
Right. And thinking that I'm more godly for it.
Oh
Right.
yeah. Yeah, knowing that God, you know what, me and Sandy were just talking about this. No, like because we'd be like knowing that God is proud of us,
Mm.
you know, and out of all the verses, and I never heard, as far as I remember, any preaching on this, and it's in Proverbs, which was supposedly written by Solomon, the wisest man that's ever lived. But it said, "These 6 things doth God hate, yea, 7 are an abomination." Right.
Mm.
So now, with all these people standing up, letting us know why God hates us and why God hates all these different groups and specific healthcare stuff and all this stuff, you know, here's a list that Solomon, the wisest man that ever lived, said these are the things that God hates, and I'm going to add one more that makes everything an abomination to him. Number one, it's got to be abortion, right? Or it's got to be, you know, being gay, right? A proud look.
Mm.
And that's all you see is pride in that. I'm better than you, you're wrong.
Yeah.
I hate the sinner, or I hate the sin but love the sinner, even though you're screaming in their face how wrong they are and how God hates them and how God's sending them to hell. Number two, a lying tongue. Like automatically we're all pieces of shit. You know, number three, hands that shed innocent blood. But then Jesus went ahead and said, anybody that hates somebody in their hearts has committed murder already. But I guess we'll save that for another Sunday. You know, we won't. This Sunday we'll just talk about how you know, anybody that's gay is gonna, you know, God's gonna blow up the earth, you know, to punish everybody because of that. Like the
Yeah.
fuck.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really unfortunate. And it'll be interesting to see, like, you know, in another 1,000 years, like if we still exist, how does Christianity arc as a religion, right? Because we've had religions that have lived and died and lived. Will Christianity continue for another 1,000, 2,000 years? Is this the falling apart of something that existed once, right? Like, I'm just curious if you think about religions and the myths that we tell ourselves about why we're here and right or wrong, good or bad. I think it's just interesting to see how they weave through human culture. And I'm curious about Christianity.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting, the evolution that it takes, how it changes.
Right. Because it's either going to be right and people are going to get raptured and other people are going to heaven, hell, it's going to be over. Or it's not right. And someday we'll die off or have a second uprising or a reiteration, right? And go through history like all of the other religions.
Yeah. That's why I've been getting into like stories on near-death experiences. Because when I was like deep Christian, like I was scared to death, of dying.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It like haunted me. Um, Dude, you know what? You know what I was just thinking of? And I know like we've seen like kind of turns from like all this stuff, but just talking about the experiences that shape us and all that stuff is going to shape our intentions, our expectations, like how we see everything in the world and what we do. When I was a kid, and I'm talking like 12 years old,
Yeah.
I would get saved about 300 times a year because anytime that I felt unsaved, I would be like, oh my God, I'm going to go to hell and I'm scared of dying. And then you would hear these stories of like, my aunt's cat got cancer, and I know that's because God's punishing me because of a sin in my life, you know? So I need to change so that my aunt's cat will be healed. Um, and damn it, like oh yeah. So I would get saved like 300 times a year. And I started to think at like 12 years old, you know, in the Baptist that I was, we were once saved, always saved. And there's one person that will be born that will never get saved, and that's the Antichrist. Like it's not even like an option, you know what I mean? Because that's what he is. And I started to think, 12 fucking years old, could I be the Antichrist? Like, is it impossible for me to get saved? Am I just evil incarnate?
Yeah. What a heavy, heavy fucking thought for a 12-year-old to have. Like that's so, I mean, at 12, you don't really have, you have a very small perspective on the world, right? And a thought that big, that's why they're life changing to us, those thoughts, because yeah, in the scope of our lives, we don't have that much to compare it to. And it just mows us over when we believe something like that.
Yeah. I mean, our identity is not fully formed yet for like another fucking decade from
Yeah.
12, you know? And I'm sitting there building the like the nitty gritty on like the rebar of the foundation of my identity with I am the Antichrist. It's impossible for me to get saved because I always feel unsaved.
Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah. I also, every time they do the prayer, I always said it like, you know, when you're at camp or church or something and they do like, I'll say it every single time when I was a kid, like baptism, I'm like, I'll do it again. Like, that's how I was.
Dude, I was
And
about
I
to ask, how many times were you
Antichrist,
baptized?
I just also felt this need of like, oh my God, I better. And I remember they said like if you eat communion, but you've done it with like something bad in your heart, you'll
You're
like
gonna
die or
die.
get yeah. And so every time communion came, I was like, oh motherfuckers, there's something I don't know about, but something's in me like, is this gonna be the
What,
time?
dude?
Like so scared that that was gonna happen to me.
And think
Thing that I
about
wasn't aware of, right? Like an evil I didn't know.
yes, and think about how messed up, if that was true, how messed up God is, because that means your last meal is this like saliva sucking fucking cracker that you got to like choke down. It is the worst last meal. And then because you eat this dried out cracker, you fall over dead.
Yeah, yeah, that's wild. Yeah, so many things about the way that modern Christianity describes God. I'm like, I wouldn't want to believe in a God like that.
Oh
Like
yeah.
that it does not line up at all with the type of the creator of the universe as I see it.
He's very small,
Yes. Yeah.
very small.
Yeah. That's kind of why I guess that if Christianity is not real and it's just going to go that it might be towards the end of its cycle and human evolution and that people might come up with something that is more beautiful, more loving, more inclusive, some kind of connection, some kind of religion, that there will be a new version of that soon. Like, can't you see where that would be true given society's place right now?
Yeah, I definitely see that. Like because I think that more and more, like I read it, I didn't understand the article. Like I read the words, but couldn't understand anything. But it was scientists believe, or there's a new theory that scientists believe that consciousness comes from a different dimension. And this is like a legit science article, like it's in, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, what the fuck, dude? So more and more we're seeing that spirituality is not an option in life. It just is.
Yes.
Um, and I don't believe the only way for us to continue to exist is to learn to be good, to do good, you know, because when it's all about me, when it's that selfishness, and when it's like I am willing to step on other people, destroy other people, all of that stuff, hoard everything, society will eat itself.
Yes.
You know, like you can't trust somebody that does that to a mass of people to then say, but I won't do that to my group. No, because once that mass of people is gone, you know, there's never a shortage of others.
Nope.
You know, once those others are gone, then the people in this circle, now others start to appear. We got to get rid of them, you know.
Yep.
And that's one of the things like Stephen Greer talks about, you know, from that movie Unacknowledged is the aliens don't have this nefarious thing. There's nothing that we need to protect ourselves from. You know, they have such advanced technology, they can take us out at any time they want, you know. And so why allow us to gain technology so that we can actually like put up a fight?
Right.
You know what I mean? Instead of just take us out now, you know. So his whole thing is it's just about that awakening into living into consciousness. And I don't think that bad is a part of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right that the next uprising will be whether it's like noetics, right? But this like science and spirituality merged where we realize that there actually is sort of a oneness, right, with nature and the world and who we are and who you are and who I am. So that when I'm being unselfish and giving to you, I'm actually giving to me, right? That whole like bigger concept, I think that if we are to survive, I think that will be the next sort of adoption that we take for our story about why we're here and how we operate in the spiritual sense. Because
Yeah.
the Christianity story it's not really holding up to what we know about the world today.
No, if I remember back in the late 80s and 90s in Sunday school, I remember we had this dude, this Sunday school teacher we loved because he was just like a regular guy, you know. And he said, like, he said one day they are going to discover that there's aliens. And he said, and he in fact his prediction was that's what was going to happen. So Christians were going to be raptured, a spaceship was going to land, and the Antichrist was going to walk out because we were pre-tribulation rapture,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So if anybody that doesn't know, there's like pre-tribulation, mid-tribulation, post-tribulation. We believed in the pre. So and he was going to usher in the 3.5 years of peace. And now the Pentagon puts out like, yeah, hey, look, there's UFOs. And because he said like it'll destroy Christianity, because if there are other species out there, did Jesus die on their planet, or was like our planet like good enough for every species in the universe, or do they
Right.
each have their
Story.
own
Yeah.
Jesus, you
Yeah.
know?
Right.
So
The smallness of the story is exposed if that happens. Right. Yeah.
right. So and I'm just like, it's just common. It's common now to turn on the news, be like, oh, there's lights all over New York or something. Like I just saw it the other day. There was like lights in New Mexico and New York, whatever. And it's like, what happened? Like nobody gives a shit, dude. Like there's fucking aliens. Like nobody cares. I'm like, I did not expect at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I want to before I forget, pitch this really great podcast I listened to this last week, and it was a physicist, and I'll link it below. And so he spent, a good part of his adult life believing that all there was the physical world, and his work was to prove why that was true, right? well-published guy, all these different papers and contributions. And then one night he wakes up in the middle of the night and he experiences like this huge, like white light and energy coming out of his chest. And then it connects him to everything in his room. And he just feels oneness and connected and like knows answers to everything. Like, oh, this is why it is. Then the feeling stops. So then he dedicates like the next 20 years of his life to trying to understand consciousness and that experience. And he actually tried to program computers to be conscious because he said, if what physics is saying is true and it's just this equals this, right? This means this, then we should be able to program it. But there's something else here because we're not, right? And so he's done all this work to try to identify like, what is that thing? And for me, it's really cool because I usually come at it from like an experiential heart place. So I like listening to people coming at it from the science, like mental understanding place. This,
Yeah.
whatever this experience is, right? So I really enjoy those kinds of conversations. That was really like high scientists talking about this work that they're doing. It's fascinating.
Yeah. And that's one of the things, like you said, like having, like coming from it from the experiential place. Cause like, I love the freedom. And I know like people can look at me and be like, well, you don't have the credentials to talk about, like, well, I'm not coming at it as an expert,
Yep.
but I'm just coming at it as like a person that loves studying this stuff. So like, I'm looking at the studies that are being done and the stuff that's coming out and, and stuff, and trying to learn as much as I can. And then having the freedom from that rigorous scientific restraints to be able to then daydream about
Yes.
what does this mean.
Yes. Yeah. There is one way in which I think you and I are both uniquely qualified. And that is because we both do a lot of personal growth work, right?
Mm,
Like a huge percentage of the population isn't aware of how to do that work, doesn't have the courage to do that work, isn't in a safe enough space to do that work, doesn't have enough downtime and has to work two jobs, so they never find that work, right? Like I don't know if it's 10%, 20% what it is, but a small amount of people have dedicated the number of years that you and I have of looking at ourselves. So I think that is the biggest like expertise that we bring to the table is like, oh, I've been doing this for years. Let me tell you how it works for me, right? Because something I say is going to trigger you to find your own recipe when I share my experience of this.
right. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And the only way that we can do that is because we've walked that terrain a bunch of
Right.
times,
Right. Yeah. I agree with that 100%. Yeah.
And
Because
starting to take more ownership for that, right? Because that wasn't something I valued about myself previously.
yeah.
Before I actually saw it as a negative, I was like, yeah, you've been fucked up all your life. What are you gonna do, man? Like you tried to make the best out of being fucked up. But now I'm like, oh, wait, no, that's not the story. The story is I am a seeker and I am consciousness in this body wants to see itself. And I am at its service to look at itself. And I can share that with other people. And
I,
that fucking switch in my story changed my life.
yep. I love that, dude. I love that. Because like you said, like that oh, it's been fucked up for so long. Like that's the monster that scares the shit out of you.
Yes.
And then when like I'm a seeker, and now all of a sudden, like, I just like in my head, I like the picture that pops up is that, what was his name? Rodney, the dude with the gray hair and the beard that gives
Oh,
like the,
yeah, yeah, yeah. I love
yeah.
him.
Oh yeah, like the monster become like, it looks like him. You know what I mean? Like somebody that's like just funny, fucking hysterical, like, but yeah, it changes the whole perspective. And it's still there, you went through the trauma,
Yep.
and that's not good, but you've what's the word, alchemized it, you've turned it into
Yes.
something good.
That's actually one of my favorite words and my favorite concepts that I think comes the closest to trying to explain this is like alchemy and how are you your own alchemist in here? How do you learn to change anger into peace? Right? That process. But that process and what's available is kind of shallow. There's still not a lot of information out there about it, right? It doesn't really quite capture it.
Yeah, I do. That is such like a cool thing. I never really thought about that before, but I mean, it's all about like turning everyday objects into gold,
Yes.
especially like in a time where, everything was like manifest destiny. So, God, golds and glory, I mean, the most precious thing on this earth, gold.
Yeah.
And at one time, in the Trobriand Islands, it would have been seashells, these shells, that they would trade, so it's turning those everyday experiences into magic
Yes.
of sitting in your garden, of talking to a fucking tree,
Mhm.
just being in the woods. Like I was watching this ant carry a dead spider for like 20 minutes. It was just fascinating to me, you
Yeah.
know, just turning a normal everyday experience into something magical.
Yeah. And as you get better at it, like this week, like I said, I was so successful. I felt so great about slowing down and being more present with my life. But that's what we're talking about. Usually I hate doing the dishes so much, right? And I'm like, this is a waste of time, this is a waste of time, this is a waste of time. I need to do this fucking faster. Like, I don't know why that's just where I go when I do dishes. And this time I was like, I'm gonna be really present with this, right? And then I'm all like, oh man, this water feels so nice. It's like, and then I was like, oh, the dishes are done,
Yeah,
right? And it was quick and fast, and it didn't take anything away from me. And it was so surprising. And I did that. Remember, I think I mentioned on the last show that I wanted to do that with my meals because I usually eat while I'm working or while I'm trying to watch an educational thing. And this time I sat down with no screens. I ate every meal that way this week. And the amount of reverence that brought to my life is shocking me.
that's big, man.
Yeah. It really kind of like I don't even believe it yet. I'm like, wait, all I had to do is slow down a little bit and I feel this way.
Yeah, but you removed all those distractions of
Right.
things telling you what's important. And then, like you said, like having that reverence. I mean, that's such an incredible word, like for yourself,
Yep.
you
And
know?
I did not get less work done. Like
Yeah,
today's Friday and I'm still going to complete the task that I set out to complete. So this story I had been telling myself about not having time to be present or obviously was not true.
and alchemy, like all the stories I hear about, it's turning lead into gold. So
Mhm.
lead, the most common substance. And we
Yes.
walk around life like everything is just another common day, doing common things, but turning just eating something
Yeah.
that you saw as a chore into the most precious thing, this gold that led into gold, man, that's crazy.
Yeah. I don't know if you've ever heard the Louis C.K. bit where he talks about people in a plane and he goes, every human in a plane should be like, oh my God, like, right, you're on a chair in the sky.
Yeah, yeah,
That should be thrilling, right? And instead, people are there going like, my fucking internet won't load, and like my chair's too like stiff, and right, just bitching while you're experiencing the miracle of flight. Are you
yeah,
kidding me? Right? Like, and that's what you're talking about is like getting in touch with like, no, this is miraculous. I'm traveling across the country to see somebody in 5 hours,
yeah,
right? That used to take somebody 3 lifetimes to get. That's amazing.
yeah, yeah. We should all be up there like singing that Aladdin song, like I can show you,
Yeah,
it should be
totally.
like this fun, yeah. But it's nothing but issues, man.
But
Just take for
for
granted.
some reason, this sort of being in our world is seen like being you're the court jester or something. It's very weird how our culture perceives this sort of living.
Yeah,
Like you're a joke. It's like, I guess I am.
yeah,
Because it feels fucking good over here, guys.
dude. Imagine, I mean, just the freedom that we all have. Like we all can meet at the same park, and you could be riding when you described your bike, it reminded me of do you remember in the Muppet movie when Kermit the Frog's riding that bike? You could
Totally.
be just Kermit the Frog in all around the park. I could be just sitting there like smoking weed and practicing my like my beginner Tai Chi. Somebody could be crane kicking on a stump somewhere. Who gives a shit? We all have the freedom to do whatever we want to do.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
who
I love when I see people out fully expressing themselves. There's a park right across the street from my house, and it has like a 2 mile paved loop in it. So I'm there a lot. And the roller derby team practices there. So chicks on roller skates go around and skateboarders are there, right? Like you're saying, all these different people. And I guess I've never spent that much time in a public park, like where I go walking every day. It is so delightful just because of what you're saying. Like people are expressing themselves, and there's, like, is it Piccolo? Like, what's that new popular game? There's courts and there's
Oh
everything.
yeah, yeah, pickleball.
Yeah, it's just so fun. I love it.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
especially love when I see somebody in like Speedos and a bright green tank top or something. And like, I'm like, you go. That's awesome.
Yeah, man. Yeah. But everything is about conforming,
Yeah,
and to what and for what? Who fucking knows, man?
right. But the story that's sold is if you don't conform, you're going to end up unloved, homeless, and on the street.
Yeah.
And that is a frightening story. So, right. Or you're going to end up in hell, or you're going to end up, right. There's all these really scary stories that keep us conformed.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I guess, I mean, they've been using that since the beginning of time. I mean, Grimm's fairy tales were just like horror stories to teach kids not to suck their thumbs or something.
Ah,
And we just grew up as adults believing them.
no, it's a trip, huh?
Like if I go out, who was it from Practical Jokers, Brian Quinn? Like he said, you see someone walk out of a hotel wearing a robe, he goes, you either think this guy is crazy or this guy has it all figured out. And I'm like,
Totally.
yeah, dude, like, I mean, I hate wearing jeans and like, in fact, my friend Danielle, like one of the first times I started working with her when I first started this, she was like, so why are you wearing jeans? Like, 'cause that's what you got to do. And now I just wear beach pants, everywhere. And in the winter, I'm like, I just got long johns to go up underneath them, dude. Like, I'm just wearing my beach pants. Like, they're the most comfortable things, dude. You know,
Right.
just it
And
doesn't
really,
matter.
like I said, if somebody's judging you about it, like you're like, dude, you're not over here. You're
Yeah,
like comfortable. I'm fucking feeling great right now. So judge me all you want.
yeah,
I'm sorry, right? I'm sorry you're not over here with me where it feels fucking good.
yeah, dude. Yeah. All,
No, I've been wearing comfortable pants.
all
You
for
know?
that conformity. Like, we all got to be the same way, doing the same thing, just the
Uh,
cog in the machine, man.
yeah, and it shows up in all these little nuanced ways, right, in different areas of our lives, and yeah,
Yeah,
it's so
just all the joy of life just passes by like like a leaf on a breeze that just flies right by. You don't even notice it, don't even pay it a second thought, man.
yeah.
You
I think
know?
that's why I love stories like fantasy, like fiction stories, because it's like there's a magical world with ours, we just can't see it. And there
Yes.
kind of is, right? Like, yeah, it's not portrayed by fairies and stuff like that, but there is a magic that exists in our world everywhere.
Yes.
And that is so cool. And that's, I think, why I'm just drawn to that genre because I want to find more of it.
Yup. Yup. And I believe that there is so much more out there. I
Mhm.
believe that if we had the ability to just glimpse reality as it is, it would, like, I don't think our brains would be able to handle what we would see.
No, I don't think so either. Yeah, we're given this little tiny bit to play around with. That's all this human body can take, right? This
Yeah.
human brain.
Yeah. Very cool, man.
What are you doing this weekend? You got any plans?
Um, Well, normally we play pool Friday nights, but we have a week off this week. So like me and Sandy are just like, we are just relaxing. So my plan is to smoke a literal butt ton of weed. And yeah, I want to watch a bunch of stuff. And like I finally have like a plan moving forward for the business. So, and I finally got one part of that plan accomplished. And I have so many videos on my phone, and I'm like, I'm going through everything, getting them all off, stuff like that. And I don't even know if they're gonna make sense anymore, half of them,
Yeah.
but start putting that up. And then after that, I'm gonna announce the next steps in my plan and actually start marketing myself.
Yay, I love that. I'm so excited for that.
I'm
That's
glad you are, because I am scared shitless, man. Oh my God, dude.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, a lot of my clients, I sort of like diminished my load for summer, and I haven't picked it back up yet, partially because I'm not sure what's happening with the business with my sister and marketing and trying to understand those pieces, but also because I feel like I'm going through a huge change in here.
Yeah,
The next version of how I show up with my next clients is going to be different because of that. And I'm not quite ready, right? I'm not quite on the other side of my own growth to start taking on clients again. But I'm really excited. Like you said, like I'm close. I feel it, right? But then how do I manifest it into new marketing and words and pictures, and how do I communicate it? I'm not there yet. That's
yeah.
hard.
Yeah, it's almost like having the experience, but not knowing how to put it into words yet. Not knowing how to
Right.
like, create a message around that yet.
Yeah, right. How to explain what you're offering so that you can attract the right clients. But it's
Right.
not just about getting clients, it's about getting clients who are ready for the process you're providing.
Correct.
Right. So they have to be able to read something and self assess. That sounds like something that would benefit me.
Right. Right.
But that's really hard to communicate.
It is, dude. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. That's an area where I'm growing.
Yeah. In fact, soon, I haven't decided like when I'm gonna do it, but I have two mushroom bars left. So that's about 8 grams. And before like the last hiking days and stuff, because like fall is coming fast, man. Um, I'm gonna go out to my special spot and do all 8 grams, and like and that's gonna be the purpose of it, is
Beautiful.
like going deep and discovering like that message.
Yeah. Yeah, my sister and I have a plan to do that together for this business that we're entertaining this idea of and trying to build is I'm going to sleep over at her house. We're going to smoke a ton of weed, right? We're going to have some drinks and just let that flow happen as much as possible, right? And the crazy brainstorming and the literal pipe dreams and right, because that's the place we want to start with, right? Is that like juicy place where, like, what are we both dreaming about with this business, with our lives? How are we going to, wind it together and weave this together? And then we'll get to the practical stuff about marketing or this or that. But like, that's the foundation. And so I'm just so excited because what a cool experience to do that with my sister, right? And really learn to know her better and co-create like that. Like I'm really excited about that. It's going to be a juicy experience.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'm like envious of that. Like I've never had someone to like go do mushrooms with,
Yeah.
and like I want that like so bad. Like I think it'll just be like a whole different experience.
Yeah, I've done it with like close friends where it's just like let's get to know each other deeper, but never in a co-creation where it's like we're going to
Yeah,
share dreams here, right? Like we're both going to look inside ourselves and then bring it out, you
right,
know,
right.
share it. And yeah, so it's going to be really cool. I don't know. I mean, my husband and I do that, but outside of that relationship, I don't do it with anybody else. So
Yeah,
it'll be really cool.
that is cool, man. One of these days, dude, one of these days we're gonna end up meeting up, and
Yeah.
we'll do like our own mushroom retreat. Like we'll just do mushrooms for 7 days straight.
I would love to do bigger retreat type things like that, but they're expensive. And so that's something I would like to manifest more money for. Um, I was listening to a podcast the other day where he said it was a retreat where you went for like, it was like 7 days, 12 days, or 21 days, and you don't see anybody else. It's just a silent retreat. You're like in a beautiful place and you have all, I don't know exactly how it works, but I'm like, I could find that valuable, like deep silence.
Yeah.
But that's like, it's like thousands of dollars to do those kinds of things. But when I think about being wealthy, I think about being able to afford things like that for my own health and wellness and expansion of being. Like to me, that would be my next level of wealth is right now, I've achieved wealth to the extent that I make my own schedule, I work from home, I have time to walk, right? Like that is a wealth. The next level of this wealth is being able to afford retreats and like the bigger external stuff that I want to learn and become.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you. Me and Sandy were just talking about that today. Because I may be doing an ayahuasca retreat soon, but I have to find out the prices.
Yeah.
I did see one. It was to go down to Oaxaca, Mexico, where Maria Sabina, her grandson is a shaman there, and you would have a private mushroom ceremony with him and his wife. And that was only $1,500.
Yeah.
I don't think that included plane tickets, but
Yeah.
I was like, wow, that's not what I've been seeing. Like I've been like at least 5 grand, and I'm not like into like I don't want to go to a resort.
Right.
I want to go to the people that have been doing this there and their ancestors have been doing this for thousands of years,
Yeah.
you know? So yeah, so I'll find out this weekend if that's gonna be a go. And it's so hard, like talk about like not attaching an expectation or a specific outcome to it. Like I already know if I'm like, all right, this is the price, and me and Sandy are talking about it, she's like, I don't think financially this is something we should do right now. I already know. I'm like, you don't ever want me to do anything. What
Right.
did I want to do? You know what I mean? Like I'm gonna fucking pout, dude. But yeah, but I mean, if not, like it's gonna happen at some point. But I don't want to go to Dubai. I don't want to like go look at all these like $1 million cars. Like I want to go to a jungle or something and do ayahuasca and stuff and explore myself more.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a place that does ayahuasca retreats. I don't know, about 4 hours from here, 4 hours south. So I have a lot of friends that go. One friend in particular who has gone, I think it's every 3 months for like the last, I think she's been 3 or 4 times now. And it's a 2 day thing. You do the medicine both days. And then around that, they just make sure like your needs are taken care of. Right. What challenges me about that idea is being around other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really difficult for me. Like if I was totally by myself, I'd be like, that sounds great. Just me and a practitioner. But, and I asked my friend about it and she said, you don't even know. And they tell people you're not here to interact with other people. So when somebody's in their experience, don't disrupt their experience,
Mhm.
right? You stay in your experience. So no one's going to bother me, but for some reason I'm still uncomfortable with that element and I'm trying to explore exactly what that is inside of me.
I'm right there with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because even thinking about going on this one, like my eating habits, because I am such a picky eater, which from what I've read is an autism sign.
Yeah.
Um, it's embarrassing to me.
Yeah.
In fact, there's cannabis groups in Connecticut. They go on hikes, and for every mile they walk, they smoke a joint. They'll do beach cleanups, like all kinds of stuff. And I've always wanted to like go, but if I don't smoke out of a pipe, I cough so much. Like my brother makes fun of me so bad because like in fact, we had a little family thing and we were sharing a joint and like I don't know why, but I'll cough to the point like where I gag.
Huh. That's
and like I'm like, oh, I'm embarrassed.
yeah.
Like I'm a weak smoker, man, you know. But
But like
so
we talked about, right? Is that thought really true? Is it serving you? What's it costing you to think that?
yeah. And that like a thought like that of like, oh, what am I gonna eat? Like, dude, I was in the army. Like, it's not
No,
like they like a waiter came around and be like, what would you like today, sir? You know, it was like, here's your food. Like,
right.
I never heard of chicken a la king. And I ended up loving that and having it for like every other day, you know, I mean, because that they just kept serving it, just chicken slop, you know, and then just eating like when we went to Bosnia, like having like MREs, which are freaking disgusting. Um, every so I've been in those situations before and nothing ever happened. But then
Right.
thinking about going to a different country with different foods, I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to eat? Like, am I going to have to sneak in like one suitcase filled with boxes of Teddy Grahams just so I will also be able to survive and not starve to death? You know, like
Right, totally.
so ridiculous. And then end up missing something like that just because of that fear.
Yeah, I think there was a funny story about one of the Beatles. I can't remember which one, where he would travel with like a suitcase full of canned beans because he couldn't handle the food. And so all he would eat was canned beans. I'll have to internet it and see if I can link it below and see if it's a true story. I don't remember where I heard it.
Oh, yeah, yeah. That's great. That's so funny.
It's kind of what you're talking about, right? Like that, like
Yeah. It just like beans wouldn't work for me. We used
Teddy bear.
to, yeah. So like when I was a kid, like we would have hot dogs and beans, right? And it would be like this big plate of beans with cut up hot dogs in it.
Yeah,
And I my family makes fun of me so bad. So how big is a bean? Like that, like it's the
right.
smallest thing. I would cut it with a knife, not in half. I would like, I mean, I would like make the thinnest slices and eat that like, and even when I did, I would just touch my tongue and I'd be like, oh, like it was so bad. I like to the point like my parents took me to a doctor, like is something
Wow.
wrong with this kid? And they did this whole thing and they said like there's I don't know what it is, like my gag reflex, it is so
Like easy to
it's
trigger or
oh
something.
my God. Yeah. Like he said, like a thought would make him just,
Right.
so even just thinking about eating the bean, he can't control this.
Huh, that's fascinating.
Yeah. So, yeah. So in fact, this at Sandy and Ruth's birthday party, my brother was telling the story about me sitting at the table, cutting my beans up into little slices and then just gagging like crazy.
Right, because in the olden days, parents were taught you should force your kids to eat things because you
Yes.
should. That was the old theory of thought. That's not the theory of thought with kids anymore, right? Like they've realized those kinds of things create eating disorders. You don't force somebody to eat something, like you said, that you're having a reaction to.
Yeah.
The
And
fact that we it's good.
I never even knew. We were all sitting around at a family reunion and we're all talking and my family, we like make fun of each other a lot, you know, but it's not like being mean. We're all just laughing at our own
Right.
stupid. And my eating habits came up and my mom just like goes, um, that's just because you're autistic. All right. She had never said that before. And I was like, are you serious? She's like, yeah, I've looked into like your eating. And I'm like, what do you, and I looked it up. And so
Yeah,
you have picky eaters, but
right.
you have people that are over the top picky eaters. And like I can go to a therapist to help me with this. And it's therapists that deal with autism.
Yeah. Right, because the signals your brain is getting whenever this flavor or texture or whatever it is that doesn't work for you, right? That's real and happening for you. It's not like you're just being picky or choosing not to like something, right? You have this physical reaction happening in your body, and that we have to like that's legitimate, right?
Yeah,
And
dude.
yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
remember Sandy gave me a blackberry or yeah, blackberry once. And I didn't know like as soon as those things hit your tongue, they just disintegrate into nothing, into this slime. And I was like, oh, that's good. And then it happened. And I was like, "Ugh." Like I couldn't swallow like if my life depended on it.
Right, right. Yes.
It was horrible. Oh, Sandy was cracking up. So
Oh.
she was like, can you just try one more, please? I just want to see that happen again.
You know what your family would be really good at is a roast. Like comedic, how
Oh,
people get roasted. For my brother-in-law, I can't remember if it was his 40th or his 50th. My sister organized all his friends in the family to like do a roast, and they had him sit up on a chair, right? And everybody came up and just, what a roast is. But your family seems like the type that has that kind of sense of humor where you could do it without anybody getting hurt, right? Because it's good spirit.
yeah. Yeah, that would be so funny. Yeah, because even now, like we got big on like white elephant Christmas, like so
Yeah,
we'll have Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, but then we have like a day specifically for the white elephant. And I make shirts based off of saying things my dad says throughout the year.
I love
Um,
it.
and like last year it was my dad said something. My mom's like, that's not true. My dad goes, well, allow me to shut the hell up. So then I put that on a shirt.
Love that. That's the kind of shirt you should be selling. That is so funny.
Yeah, dude, allow me to shut
Seriously,
the
you could
hell
get
up.
ideas for your merch with old shirts you probably already had made.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I have a shirt that said that. That's freaking hilarious.
Yeah, then what did he say once? Like, because I'll turn everything into a story, but my mom had a hip replacement and she was like using the bathroom and like so when I had my hip replacement, you got to get like a toilet seat that's high, and their toilet is like for some reason it's very low. So even with like the extension, whatever on it, like it was still too low. And my dad's like, "You're not even trying. You're not trying." So I came up with this saying like, "Don't tell me you can't when you're trying to use the can." And I made a T-shirt with like that saying on it. And then I
Ew,
put like, I quote my dad, so I put like, William F. Dosh on it.
I love
Um,
that.
yeah, so yeah, all my dad's kind of like that Rodney guy.
Yeah, like you could make your dad famous by selling t-shirts of his sayings. Everybody'd be
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I love that. That is awesome. That is so funny. Well, I think I'm going to go clean my house today, which is something I love to do. And tomorrow we're having a little get together with friends. And
Nice.
my garden is just like freaking rad. And so I want everybody to come over, have like a little garden party, and you would love it. I have all these little solar lights. So like as soon as the sun starts to go down, there's like these little spotlights in different colors, and there's like a long track of mushroom lights that like light up under the flowers. And, like I just have it so like decked out to be cool and like vibing. And so I want all of my people to come over and experience my garden, so we're going to do a little party here on Saturday night. So I'm going to prep for that.
You know what you got to do one day? Because I think it would be right up your alley too. Do a Dwight Schrute garden party.
Oh, yeah, that's such a good idea. Maybe
You
I'll do
just
that
have
for my
somebody
birthday.
announcing, yeah, that book that Jim wrote. You just have somebody announcing when everybody comes in and like how important they are is how loud they yell.
I freaking love that idea. I'm totally going to do that. That's so awesome. Do you remember, was it the movie The Office with like Jennifer Aniston? Or is it
Oh
just
yeah, yeah,
Office
yeah.
Space? Do you know
Yeah.
that movie? Well, in that movie, they have like pieces of flair, like buttons. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
My friend came dressed as that to a party where he just had like all these buttons and like a uniform. It was so cool. I love silly stuff like that. That's my
Yeah.
plan for my next birthday. Thanks, Keith. I'll have
Oh
a
yeah. That's gonna be
garden
awesome.
party. All
You gotta
right.
like do the dance.
Yeah, yeah. That whole, yeah. I'm gonna rewatch those episodes now.
Yeah.
Well, Keith, it was awesome to see you today. I had super fun, and
Yeah,
I
it's
guess,
really cool. Nothing that
yeah,
we expected, but yeah, it went a cool way, man.
yeah, really cool. So, um, I will see you on Monday, and we'll see everybody else in 2 weeks. Well, we don't know. our posting might be a little different. We will update on that because we're going to do
Yeah.
every for a while, but then it'll end up being every other week at some point as our recording schedule changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Cool. Well, have a nice weekend.
All right, you too. I am going to stop this now. Oh, wait.
Thank you so much for joining us. We are so grateful for all of our listeners. Please support us in doing what we love. It's as simple as hitting that like or subscribe button. It would really mean a lot to us. Thanks, guys, and we'll see you next week.